Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a long time since I have uploaded a video. I think like maybe 3 or 4 days. And that's because I've been really busy. It's been a hectic week. However, today we're back and we are previewing the Grizzlies offseason. And this is a team that's got a really good young core, headlined by Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson. So this offseason, I'm not sure that there's a lot that they're going to be able to do, but there's a few things. Last year, the biggest hit that this team made outside of drafting Ja Morant with the second overall pick in the draft, because it looks like they found their franchise player with that particular pick. But I guess the second best move that this team made last year was hiring Taylor Jenkins to be their coach. A former Milwaukee Bucks assistant coach. It always makes me happy to see my guys doing well and being successful in the NBA as a Bucks fan. But Taylor did a great job coaching this team this offseason, or this season, I should say, developing young guys like Ja, Jaren, and Brandon Clark, getting good quality play from veterans such as Jonas Valanciunas, Anthony Tolliver, especially Tolliver, because someone like him could have just mailed it in saying, well, I might retire after this season. I don't have much to give to a young team. But he played really hard and was a solid player for this team. So I just think that Taylor did a great job with this team. And I think that if they would have made the playoffs, then he would have really deserved to be in that Coach of the Year conversation. Because this was a team that a lot of people picked to be the worst in the NBA going into the season. And Taylor led this team to being really, really good. And a lot of that has to do with Ja Morant being better than a lot of people expected. But Taylor deserves a good amount of credit as well. In the draft, they have the 40th pick. Second round pick, like I like to say, if you can find a role player here, someone that can be a rotational guy in the NBA, that's great. My favorites are Sam Merrill, Paul Reed, guys like that in this range are the ones that I'm really looking at. Another one that recently has stood out to me in some of the highlights I've watched would be Skylar Mays from LSU. I think that he has a chance to be a really good player as well. So those are a few candidates for them to take with the 40th pick. In terms of trades, I think that they could try to move into the first round. There are not too many things that I could see this team parting with that would allow them to move up. Maybe it's giving up someone like... I really don't see a trade here. Maybe it's Tyus Jones or Dylan Brooks that allows them to move up, but I'm not sure that they want to part with either of those players. And those players could help a good team move on, but I think that the Grizzlies really like those guys and they want them to be a part of their core moving forward. So I really don't see a trade up for them in this draft. However, it's also possible they could trade for a star, someone like Victor Oladipo or Drew Holiday, to put alongside Ja and Jaren to help this team accelerate their timeline a little bit and be a playoff team next year. Because I think if they got a guy like one of those two, then they would certainly be a playoff team. And that would probably be something like Gorgie Jang, one of their young players, so probably like Brandon Clark. So like Jang Clark, the 40th pick, and a future first rounder. That probably would be enough to get someone like Victor Oladipo. And I really do think that the Grizzlies would consider that, but I don't think that they would end up doing it because Clark is just too good of a young player. Too much potential. We saw him have a great rookie season. I think that he finished third in the Rookie of the Year vote. No, fourth in the Rookie of the Year voting. And he had an outstanding rookie season, made all rookie first team. And I really don't think that they should part with him. In free agency, they have a few guys outgoing. The main one being DeAnthony Melton, who has showed that he can be a solid defense first guard for this team. We saw Melton have a great improvement this season, and he looks like a guy that can be a good player for an NBA team, and he is restricted, and I think that the Grizzlies likely will want to retain him because he's shown that he can be a quality NBA player, and he's a young guy who is still on a linear growth of improvement. He still has lots of room to get better, and if he continues in this system that has shown a pretty good knack for player production and developing guys like Dylan Brooks, D'Anthony Melton could continue to progress and become a better player. The other guy is Josh Jackson, who obviously struggled a bit in his first couple years in the league. However, he was drafted 4th overall by the Suns just a few years ago, and I do think that it's possible that the Grizzlies could just take a flyer on him and say the talent was there during the draft, and obviously the Suns saw it when they took you 4th overall, so maybe you'll pan out for us. I don't think that it's going to take much money due to the off-court problems and not great on-court production we've seen from Josh Jackson, but I do think that it's worth a flyer, and I'm sure at least one team will want to take that flyer. Whether it's the Grizzlies or not, I'm unsure. In addition, they have Anthony Tolliver, who is a guy who is a solid veteran for them this season and can really help set a tone and a culture for this young group moving forward, because we don't want them to end up being a group like the Sixers that just doesn't have any discipline. That is not what you want, and that's a big reason why I think one of the main targets for this team this offseason should be to acquire players with that championship pedigree that can set a tone for your team and help them to become winners. Obviously, Tristan Thompson has won a championship, and they are pretty set at the center position with Jonas Valanciunas, and they're paying Gorgui Dieng a large contract. However, bringing in a player like that could be invaluable. Maybe Matthew Dellavedova could be a candidate. His contract with Cleveland is expiring, and bringing him in to be a backup point guard and someone to mentor Ja could be very useful. And he's a very good leader from what I've heard, so Delly could be a candidate. Just a player like that who has been there, done that, and can help this team to set that right, become that right culture, and become a team that believes that they can win a championship at some point in the future. That's very important, as we've seen with the Heat. They have great culture. A team like the Nuggets has great culture, and I think that the Grizzlies should try to replicate that. Bring in their Paul Millsap like the Nuggets did when they were an exciting young team. Who's that veteran that can accelerate the Grizzlies' timeline a little bit further? Trading for Oladipo or Holiday would make sense to me, but you'd rather sign someone. So maybe they wait until next offseason and get that veteran guy, because, quite frankly, there aren't a whole lot of those type of players that are out there right now. Gallinari could be a veteran that they could target. However, he just doesn't make sense, as they have they're pretty solid in the front court with Jaren Jackson and Jonas Valanciunas, and I'm not sure that you want Gallo playing the 3. Other guys they could look at, Goran Dragic overlaps with Morant, so really you'd be looking at a small forward or a shooting guard, and I'm not really sure who that player could be for them. And I do think that Valanciunas is someone that has done a great job for them in being that tone setter as their vet presence, and I think that's a big reason why they gave him the contract that they did. A lot of people thought that it was a little odd for a young team to be paying a guy like Jonas Valanciunas the amount of money that they are each season. However, he proved he was worth that money by having one of the best seasons of his career. So I do think that signing a culture-establishing vet could be a very good thing for this team to target in the offseason. However, some other things could be retaining those outgoing guys like D'Anthony Melton and Josh Jackson and Anthony Tolliver, or signing a young player to bolster their young core, someone like a Derrick Jones Jr. or a Harry Giles, just as a young guy who didn't pan out in his initial home, that they could bring in and develop into being a good player for them that can be on a similar trajectory into their prime as their centerpieces in Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. This team, like I said, I really think that they are going to be good, and I think they're one piece away from being a surefire playoff team. As of now, I think that they'll probably be battling it out at the bottom of the Western Conference. Ja Morant is really good, and I really do think that he's kind of underrated sometimes because of what we've seen from Zion and all the hype that Zion is getting. I think that Ja is probably a better player than Zion right now because he doesn't have that question of his conditioning and injury problems. So I think that Ja Morant is a very good young player there aren't many young guys that I would rather build a team around besides over Ja. I think probably Jason Tatum and Luka Doncic for sure. After those two, Ben Simmons, Donovan Mitchell. I'm sure I'm not thinking of someone, but those are really the only four that really stand out to me as guys that I would rather be building my team around than Ja. I think I'd rather have him than Brandon Ingram. I already said I'd rather have him than Zion. So Ja is a good centerpiece for this team, and they need to continue building around him moving forward. Jaren Jackson Jr. can be a great complementary piece to Ja, and he really looks like he's going to be that second star for them. Has a big man who can pick and pop, has a decent back to the basket game, and is a very, very good shot blocker. Obviously, he can work on his fouling. He fouls quite a bit too much, and that's been the main knack on him so far in his career. But if he can improve that, he'll be a very good player. Finally, they have Brandon Clark, who had a great rookie season, and in those three, they have a very solid young core. They have some good role players, some good veteran role players surrounding that core. Guys like Dylan Brooks, Tyus Jones, and Jonas Valanciunas that are helping to make that group better and playing their roles alongside them. And they also have a guy in Grayson Allen that I think is going to pan out to be a solid NBA player. And he's still pretty young. So if they re-signed Anthony Melton, you've got all of those guys plus Melton. That's a solid core right there, and this looks like a team that's going to be really, really good in the Western Conference for years to come. That's it for me. I hope that you all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. Leave a comment on what you think about the Grizzlies. And ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.